Hello and welcome to another edition of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale history. Today we are looking at the stars of the first major platformer franchise on the PlayStation 2 straight out of Sony, the heroic duo of Jak and Daxter. Jak and Daxter series was a 3D platformer franchise that debuted back on the PS2 in 2001. It featured a silent protagonist called Jak and his wisecracking sidekick Daxter, who was originally a human but then got turned into a creature known as an Ottsel.
That stung!
The first game is a simple Mario 64 style collect 'em up with Jak and Daxter travelling around a series of lush landscapes collecting various trinkets in order to progress. It's a fairly simple game, but with plenty of charm, and it did well enough to make the duo a face for the PlayStation 2. The sequels overhauled the concept entirely. They added in Grand Theft Auto style sandbox elements and guns, and they took a darker, edgier stance.
You okay, Jak?
Jak 2 and 3 saw the duo joining a battle for freedom while simultaneously trying to discover the secret of the Precursors, an ancient godlike race who seemingly have an all-important destiny planned for Jak. Jak and Daxter in PlayStation All-Stars see you playing as Jak while Daxter rides on his shoulder, much like in their original games, and the moveset seems primarily derived from Jak 3, but as we'll see, much of that moveset was developed over the course of the entire series, and retained all the way up to the end. So let's take a look at them, shall we? Before we begin, let's talk about the progression of the series a little more because it relates to Jak's costumes in PlayStation All-Stars. The series started as a bright and colourful 3D platformer, becoming a dark and moody sandbox adventure game for the second and third games, and then gained a racing spin-off called Jak X. To illustrate this, Jak's three main outfits are representative of these different eras of the game's storyline. Old World Jak is Jak's outfit from the first game, which was appropriately set in the Old World, hence why it being called Old World Jak. Mars armor, Jak's default, is the full armor set that Jak wears by the end of Jak 3. Finally, his combat racer outfit is straight out of Jak X and references that game's subtitle, Combat Racing. As for alt colours, Jak's blue variant for Mars armor may represent the Freedom League of Jak 3, while the red variant may represent the Crimson Guard of Jak 2. The brown variant of Old World Jak may be based loosely on the prison uniform of Jak 2. As for the rest, there doesn't seem to be anything specific, but feel free to correct me on this. Okay, let's continue. Since Jak and Daxter the Precursor legacy was a simple 3D platformer in the same vein as many games from the late 90s on the PS1, Jak's moves were basic cartoony melee moves. The first move was a spin, where Jak would spin around and flail his limbs about while he did so. This move was faithfully translated over into PlayStation All-Stars, where it acts as a good crowd control move for Jak, allowing him to hit opponents either side of him. It also allows him to hover if he performs in the air, much like in his original game, where it could be used as a small glide to aid tricky jumps. The next move that Jak had at his disposal was a punch, where he would dash forward, thrusting his fist in front of him. This move saw another faithful translation into PlayStation All-Stars and works in much the same way.
Punch those poles up from below!
The uppercut was generally performed by crouching, but could also be performed immediately after a forward punch by pressing the jump button. This is one of Jak's basic combos in PlayStation All-Stars and can be performed easily by simply pressing square a second time. If Jak was in the air in his original game, instead of performing the forward punch when you press the button, he would instead perform a slam move where he would dive down and punch the ground. This was used as a way to attack enemies from above or to activate switches. Another faithful transition, the PlayStation All-Stars version is still basically the same. It is very good at knocking an opponent into the air, allowing for the possibility of transitioning into more aerial combos. Speaking of which...
Wow, the jetboard's ours! I call shotgun.
In Jak 2, Jak picked up a jetboard which was used for a couple of purposes. The first was for transportation, allowing Jak a faster way to get around Haven City than just walking, but a less bulky way than taking a vehicle. The second use was in a trick challenge, where Jak could perform a series of flips and spins and grinds to rack up points to earn prizes. The jetboard got transferred over to PlayStation All-Stars as an aerial move for Jak in place of the forward punch. There are two elements to it, the first being a dash forward, the second being a spin attack to turn it into a small combo. Unusually, these elements were reversed from their original appearance, where speed boosts tended to be performed by doing spin tricks perfectly, while it seems the All-Stars version has a spin after the speed boost. The jetboard was also used in a couple of Jak's throws, making use of both his basic spin and flip moves. The rest of Jack's PlayStation All-Stars moveset is derived from the morph gun that got introduced in Jak 2 onwards, which changes its abilities depending on which mod is equipped. The mods are colour-coded, and those colours have an origin in the first game. In the Precursor Legacy, you could find orbs of mysterious energy known as Eco. It came in a variety of colours, each with its own properties. The first we'll talk about is Red Eco.
Red Eco makes your attacks stronger.
As Daxter said, Red Eco doubled the power of your attacks. Strong enemies who normally required 2 hits to take out only took 1 with Red Eco. This was translated into the Red mod, providing a powerful short-range weapon in Jak 2 known as the Scattergun, which was similar in function to a shotgun. The Scattergun isn't in PlayStation All-Stars, but its upgrade from Jak 3 is. This was the Wave Concussor, another powerful short-range weapon, only this time it generated a small shockwave around Jak, and this shockwave could be charged up to increase its range and power. This weapon was translated faithfully over to PlayStation All-Stars as a useful crowd control move, and acts as a great way to kick off combos. It also retains the ability to be charged up.
Wow! You can shoot fireballs when you're powered up with Yellow Eco.
Yellow Eco is the second type of Eco we're looking at now, and as Daxter stated, it allowed you to chuck fireballs, giving Jak his only ranged move in the first game. Because this was Jak's original range move, this meant that the yellow mod was all ranged weapons. The first of these was the Blaster, introduced in Jak 2. As the name suggests, this was a gun that fired a series of blasts in a straight line ahead of Jak. Its inclusion in PlayStation All-Stars is pretty much the same, only it's limited to 3 blasts rather than the continuous stream in his original game. The next version of the yellow mod was the Beam Reflexor, introduced early in Jak 3. It's a silly name, but it's oddly accurate. It fired beams that reflected off walls and also enemies, allowing for chained kills. The All-Stars version is unusual since Jak only fires it downwards so it reflects off the floor. It also no longer has the ability to reflect off opponents. There was a third upgrade to the yellow mod, which was the Gyro Burster. This was essentially a floating turret that Jak could deploy to kill enemies for him. It could be stopped once it was fired, but why would you want to do a thing like that? PlayStation All-Stars version is basically the same thing, only its range and its firing rate have been slightly reduced.
That's Blue Eco, which contains the energy of motion.
Yes, this is the third type of Eco you could encounter in Jak and Daxter. It was the most common form of Eco you could find in the game, and gave Jak extra speed, and due to its similarity to electricity, had the ability to magnetically attract other Eco or Precursor orbs to you when you were powered up with it. It was also able to power up old Precursor artifacts throughout the land, allowing Jak to open ancient doors, launch himself with fancy launchers, and power up lift platforms. The speed and electric elements of this Eco got transferred into the Blue mod with the Vulcan Fury in Jak 2, which was basically a Gatling gun. This wasn't in PlayStation All-Stars, so we'll move swiftly onto the upgrades that were. In Jak 3, the first upgrade for the Blue mod was the Arc Wielder. As the name suggests, it allowed you to wield an arc of electricity and aim it at enemies. Its PlayStation All-Stars version significantly shortened the range and limited its ability to curve around. It's still fairly useful if you can catch opponents in it, since it allows you to steadily build AP as you aim it into a crowd, but it's nowhere near as useful as its original version. The second upgrade was the Needle Laser. Surprisingly for the final Blue mod upgrade, it wasn't all that powerful. It shot lots of tiny lasers at opponents, but largely acted as a homing Gatling gun, and required a lot of shots to take an enemy down. The All-Stars version only shoots 3 lasers, but its individual laser feels a little more powerful. That said, the homing ability has been reduced a little. Now let's talk about a more unusual form of Eco that we encounter in the first game, Dark Eco.
Eek! What is that dark ooze? It sure don't look friendly.
It certainly isn't friendly at all. You see, Dark Eco in the first game was typically found in pools, and touching it meant instant death. It's the same substance that turned Daxter into an Ottsel, and later has an adverse effect on Jak, which we'll get to later. Basically, it was generally bad stuff. So, naturally, all guns based on Dark Eco are incredibly strong and unpredictable. We got a glimpse of the first Dark mod weapon in the hands of Sig, a Wastelander soldier we meet early on in Jak 2, before finally getting our own hands on it late in the game. Peacemaker was basically a rocket launcher that electrocuted its targets. In PlayStation All-Stars it's basically the same, only now Jak fires it diagonally upwards, and for some strange reason it's much less powerful, providing only 5 AP for the effort it takes to hit someone with it. Next upgrade to the Dark mod was the Mass Inverter. Basically, this is a strange weapon that causes your opponents to float aimlessly. In its original form in Jak 3, it had a wide range and would fling your opponents into the air for quite some time so you could get rid of them easily. In PlayStation All-Stars, it works much the same way, only, as with many of his other weapons, the range was reduced, as was the length of time opponents are frozen. It's very good at kicking off aerial combos though, so that's that benefit. So we've talked a lot about Jak, but what about Daxter himself? Well, he spends most of the series hanging out on Jak's shoulders and wisecracking, but this support role does seem to be a large inspiration for much of the duo's character in PlayStation All-Stars. Daxter is a highly animated character. While he spends most of his time on Jak's shoulders, there are things that dislodge him. For instance, when you perform a spin attack, Daxter will fall off Jak's shoulder and scramble to climb back onto him. This may be the inspiration for the Ready When You Are intro. Daxter is also a lot cockier than he should be, constantly trying to convince people that he's the real hero of the duo, with lines like,
"You can call me Orange Lightning."
and
That's right, we bad. You haven't forgotten what I taught you, Jak.
this is referenced in most of Jak's taunts, where Daxter in every single one will leap off Jak's shoulders and taunt the opponent, much like how he taunted Boast in many of the series' cutscenes. Elements of this can also be seen in intros too. Most of Daxter's lines are taken directly from the original series. I showed you a couple already, in fact.
Orange Lightning.
Daxter also loves to break the fourth wall, in other words talking directly to the camera. This can be seen frequently, but most notably when he comments on game rights in the duo's racing contract in Jak 2. This persistent fourth wall breaking is referenced in the "This Isn't a Game" intro, which is also a line spoken by the monk Seem in Jak 3.
This isn't a game.
Daxter has been playable on a few occasions, but it's rare. Aside from his own spin-off game on the PSP, Daxter could also be played in some sections of Jak 3, usually in very simple platforming sections. The only element of this that appears in PlayStation All-Stars is in Jak's side throw, where Daxter helps pummel the opponent while Jak winds up a punch. So before we move on to the supers, let's have a quick recap of all the moves.
Level 1!
So the first game is called Precursor Legacy. But what is a precursor?
The sage yaps on about the precursors that built this place all the time. Where did they go? Why did they build this crud?
Yes, the plot of the first game featured the mystery of who the precursors were. All that's known about them is that they were an intelligent race that existed long ago, and that much of what they built now litters the landscape.
Oh, stupid precursor junk.
Throughout Jak and Daxter, you could make use of these precursor artifacts to accomplish a number of goals. Here's an example.
Yeah, so we got a precursor launcher here, but you aren't powered up with the blue stuff. So it ain't gonna help us!
Yes, should probably mention that Blue Eco has a key role in this. I'll let Samus explain.
This is a precursor door. It can only be opened by approaching the door while channeling Blue Eco through your body.
So we all know about Eco's power since we've talked about it quite a bit today. But how did Jak collect Eco in the original game? The most common way was simply picking it up off the ground, where it would just often be littered around in places that were particularly convenient for Jak. It's really amazing that Blue Eco can be found near precursor artifacts that require Blue Eco for power. Who knew? However, there was another way to find Eco, as sometimes the precursors had made vents that pulled Eco from the earth and straight to the surface. These were a little rarer than random Eco drops, but they were useful as they entirely filled Jak's Eco gauge with that colour, meaning that the power lasted for a lot longer. When Jak stepped on one, the supercharge of power is represented with him launching a little off the ground for a moment in reaction to the surge. This has become Jak's level 1 super in PlayStation All-Stars, where Jak will summon a vent, and the surge of Blue Eco it provides forces him up into the air. Some people may try to tell you that this is a precursor launcher, but those people are wrong and stupid. Yes, you heard me.
Level 2!
So, Dark Eco is bad stuff, remember? As Daxter can tell you all about.
Who knows what more Dark Eco would do to you?
Look at me, Jak. I'm short, I'm hairy, and I itch in strange places. I couldn't do worse.
Now, let's see what happens to Jack at the beginning of Jak 2. At the start of the game, the tyrannical Baron Praxis, ruler of Haven City, kidnaps Jack and pumps him full of dark eco in the hopes of turning him into a super soldier.
Whoa! What'd they do to you?
The result is a Hulk-like transformation that turns Jack into a demonic creature whenever he gets angry.
Something's happening to me. Something he did. I can't control it.
Despite this when I'm angry plot point, in gameplay Dark Jack is actually summoned forth by collecting enough dark eco orbs and filling up your gauge and then pushing a button. Dark Jack is a powerful beast, increasing Jack's strength. During the course of the game you could also gain extra abilities for him, including the one we're most interested in, the Dark Bomb. Dark Bomb was basically a screen clearing attack that saw Dark Jack slam into the ground, creating a shockwave that wiped out everything in the vicinity. This ability naturally became Jack's level 2 in PlayStation All-Stars, though the shockwave is a little reduced. Initially it was a little limited and felt heavily nerfed from its original appearance, but later patches seemingly made it more useful and more in line with the original form. Another thing to note about Dark Jack is that he appears in one of Jack's losing poses too. This animation seems to resemble the animation when Jack is trying to control the transformation early on in Jak 2.
Level 3!
At the end of the first Jak game, during the final phase of the last boss fight, this happens.
Light eco! It does exist! They must not be allowed to get it!
This is the first time in the series we hear about light eco, and we see that, like all eco, it has an unusual effect on Jak, allowing him to dispatch the final boss easily in one final hit. Things were kind of left hanging on the light eco subject until Jak 3, when this happened.
Hey, it's one of those goober-eyed precursor thingies.
Greetings, great warrior. Your return brings us great hope. You will need all the power you can muster to survive this terrible test, Great One. Look into the light and receive a power, hero.
Okay, now you're scaring me.
Dax, the dark eco, it feels far away. I feel better.
This is Light Jak, a counterpart transformation to Dark Jak. Jak was given these powers by the Precursors, and he gained various abilities over the course of the game, ranging from his shield, healing powers, and wings. So, if Dark Jak is Jak's level 2, Light Jak is his level 3. It retains all the abilities from Jak 3, including the shield and the ability to freeze opponents, and he can fly around the stage with his wings, and he also gained an energy blast move seemingly taken from the end of the Precursor Legacy. Speaking of which, the landing pose that Jak performs when he gets the light energy at the end of the Precursor Legacy may also be the inspiration for another of Jak's intros.
Go precursor on them.
Now before we go, I should probably talk about one of Jak's victory poses, the victory dance, which is, well, a victory dance. It's taken from one of the many victory dances that Jak and Daxter would do anytime they collected a power cell, which is one of the key collectibles in the Precursor Legacy, one which allowed further progress the more you collected. That's right, We Bad may also be another winning pose from the same game, and while it's not exact, the duo's first bit of victory music may be loosely based on the short jungle that plays during these instances. Another victory pose called Life is Good shows Jak draping the morph gun over his shoulders. This actually seems to reference a piece of official artwork related to Jak 2. So that's Jak. Stay tuned for the next video, although I'm not going to say who it is. You should be able to figure that one out for yourself.